There are, I think, three crucial reasons why it is worth coming on this journey with me. The first is that a life full of distraction is, at an individual level, diminished. When you are unable to pay sustained attention, you can't achieve the things you want to achieve. You want to read a book, but you are pulled away by the pings and paranoia of social media. You want to spend a few interrupted hours with your child, but you keep anxiously checking your email to see if your boss is messaging you. You want to set up a business, but your life dissolves instead into a blur of Facebook posts that only makes you feel envious and anxious. Through no fault of your own, there never seems to be enough stillness, enough cool, clear space for you to stop and think. A study by Professor Michael Posner at the University of Oregon found that if you are focusing on something and you get interrupted, on average it will take 23 minutes for you to get back to the same state of focus. A different study of office workers in the US found most of them never get an hour of uninterrupted work in a typical day. If this goes on for months and years, it scrambles your ability to figure out who you are and what you want. You become lost in your own life. When I went to Moscow to interview the most important philosopher of attention in the world today, Dr. James Williams, who works on the philosophy and ethics of technology at Oxford University, he told me, if we want to do what matters in any domain, any context in life, we have to be able to give attention to the right things. If we can't do that, it's really hard to do anything. He said that if we want to understand the situation we are in at the moment, it helps to picture something. I imagine you are driving a car, but somebody has thrown a big bucket of mud all over the windshield. You are going to face a lot of problems in that moment. You are at risk of knocking off your rear view mirror, or getting lost, or arriving at your destination late. But the first thing you need to do before you worry about any of those problems is clean your windshield. Until you do that, you don't even know where you are. We need to deal with our attention problems before we try to achieve any other sustained goal. The second reason we need to think about this subject is that this fracturing of attention isn't just causing problems for us as individuals, it's causing crisis in our whole society. As a species, we are facing a slew of unprecedented tripwires and trapdoors, like the climate crisis, and unlike previous generations, we are mostly not rising to solve our biggest challenges. Why? Part of the reason, I think, is that when attention breaks down, problem solving breaks down. Solving big problems requires the sustained focus of many people over many years. Democracy requires the ability of population to pay attention long enough to identify real problems, distinguish them from fantasies, come up with solutions, and hold their leaders accountable if they fail to deliver them. If we lose that, we lose our ability to have a fully functioning society. I don't think it's a coincidence that this crisis in paying attention has taken place at the same time as the worst crisis of democracy since the 1930s. People who can't focus will be more drawn to simplistic authoritarian solutions and less likely to see clearly when they fail. A world full of attention deprived citizens alternating between Twitter and Snapchat, will be a world of cascading crises where we can't get a handle on any of them. The third reason we need to think deeply about focus is, for me, the most hopeful. If we understand what's happening, we can begin to change it. The writer James Baldwin, the man who is, for my money, the greatest writer of the 20th century, said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." This crisis is human made, and it can be unmade by us too. I want to tell you right at the start how I gathered the evidence I am going to present to you in this book and why I selected it. In my research, I read a very large number of scientific studies, and then I went to interview the scientists who I thought had gathered the most important evidence. Several different kinds of scientists have studied attention and focus. One group are neuroscientists, and you will hear from them. But the people who have done the most work on why it is changing are the scientists who analyze how changes in the way we live affect us, both as individuals and as groups. I studied social and political sciences at Cambridge University, where I got a rigorous training in how to read and study these scientific publish, how to access the evidence they put forward, and I hope how to ask probing questions about it. These scientists often disagree with each other about what is happening and why. This isn't because the science is rickety, but because humans are extremely complex, and it's really hard to measure something as complicated as what affects our ability to pay attention. This obviously presented a challenge to me as I wrote this book. If we wait for perfect evidence, we will be waiting forever. I had to proceed, doing my best, on the basis of the best information we have, while always being conscious that this science is fallible and fragile and needs to be handled with care. So I have tried, at every stage in this book, to give you a sense of how controversial the evidence I am offering is. On some of the topics, the subject has been studied by hundreds of scientists, and they have achieved a broad consensus that the points I am going to put forward are correct. That's obviously the idea, and wherever it was possible, I sought out scientists who represent a consensus in their field and built my conclusions on the solid rocks of their knowledge. But there are some other areas where only a handful of scientists have studied the question I wanted to understand, and so the evidence I can draw on are thinner. There are a few other topics where different reputable scientists strongly disagree about what's really going on. In those cases, I am going to tell you upfront and try to represent a range of perspectives on the question. At every stage, I have tried to build my conclusions on the strongest evidence I could find. I have tried to always approach this process with humility. I am not an expert on any of these questions. I am a journalist approaching experts and testing and explaining their knowledge as best I can. If you want more detail on these debates, I delve much deeper into the evidence in the more than 400 notes I have put on my book's website, discussing the more than 250 scientific studies I have drawn on in this book. I have also sometimes used my own experiences to help explain what I learned. My individual anecdotes obviously aren't scientific evidence. They tell you something simpler. Why I wanted to know the answers to these questions so badly. When I came back from my trip to Memphis with Adam, I was appalled at myself. One day I spent 3 hours reading the same few pages of novel, getting lost in distracted thoughts every time, almost as though I was stoned, and I thought, I can't continue like this. Reading fiction had always been one of my greatest pleasures, and losing it would be like losing a limb. So I announced to my friends that I was going to do something drastic. I thought this was happening to me because I wasn't disciplined enough as an individual and because I had been taken over by my phone. So at the time, I thought the solution was obvious. Be more disciplined and banish your phone. I went online and booked myself a little room by the beach in Provincetown at the tip of Cape Cod. I am going to be there for 3 months, I announced triumphantly to everyone with no smartphone and no computer that can get online. I'm done. I'm through. For the first time in 20 years, I'm going offline. I talked to my friends about the double meaning of the word wired. It means both being in a maniac, hypermental state and being online. They seem to me to be tied together, these twin definitions. I was tired of being wired. I needed to clear my head. And so I did it. I quit. I set up an auto reply saying I would be unreachable for the next 3 months. I abandoned the buzz in which I had vibrated for 20 years. I tried to go into this extreme digital detox without any illusions. I knew this ditching of the entire internet couldn't be a long-term solution for me. I wasn't going to join the Amish and abandon technology forever. Even more than that, I knew this approach couldn't be a short-term solution for most people. I come from a working-class family. My grandmother, who raised me, cleaned toilets. My dad was a bus driver. In saying to them that the solution to their attention problems would be to quit their jobs and go and live in a shack by the sea would be a spiteful insult. They literally can't do it. I did it because I thought that if I didn't, I might lose some crucial aspects of my ability to think deeply. I did it in desperation. And I did it because I felt that if I stripped everything back for a time, I might start to be able to glimpse the changes we could all make in a more sustainable way. This drastic digital detox taught me a lot of important things, including, as you'll see, the limits of digital detoxes. It began on a morning in May when I set off for Provincetown with the glare of the screens of Graceland haunting me. I thought the problem was in my own distractible nature and in our tech, and I was about to give my devices away. Freedom, oh freedom, for a long, long time.